In this video, I want to answer the question, am I ready to get married? Now, maybe you're dating someone and the two of you are talking about marriage, or maybe you just feel like it's the time of life where you're ready to get married, that's the next big step in your life, and so you're starting to think about those things. Whatever the case, I want to help you answer some questions that'll help you figure out, are you ready to get married or not? The first question I want you to answer is, are you a trustworthy person? This is a really important question because trust is foundational in any relationship, especially when it comes to marriage. I mean, you have to be able to trust your spouse. Now, here's an interesting thing that you need to know about trust. Trust is earned. Trust is reactive. Trust isn't proactive. You see, trust is based on the integrity of someone. A lot of times I'll talk to people in marriage who have problems, who have issues. There's a lack of trust in their marriage. And I never say, well, you know what? Just trust your spouse more. Yeah, they stay out late and they get up in the middle of the night and go on the internet. Don't worry about what they're doing. Just trust them. That's ridiculous. Trust is reactive. It's based on what people do and what they say and how they respond. And so if you think you're ready for marriage, you need to make sure that you're a trustworthy person. Otherwise, you're going to have a painful marriage. I love what Proverbs says. Proverbs 25:19. Putting trust in an unreliable person is like chewing with a toothache or walking on a broken foot. If you aren't trustworthy, you're like a toothache, and nobody wants to be married to a toothache. So if you think that marriage is around the corner for you, focus on being a trustworthy person. Become a person of integrity. If you've got a boyfriend or girlfriend, think about ways that you can show integrity. One practical way to show integrity is in the matter of sexual purity. You know, keeping yourself sexually pure with your boyfriend or girlfriend and on your own, that is an act of integrity. It builds trust. Or think about how you respond when your boyfriend or girlfriend shares their emotions or brings up a hard subject. Are you open? Are you argumentative? How do you respond? Hopefully, you reveal yourself to be a person of trust. Here's the second question I want to ask you. Are you ready for a lifelong commitment? The Bible makes it very clear, marriage is a lifelong commitment. The only thing that should end a marriage is death. These aren't my words, this is what Jesus said. Take a look at what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 19. And Jesus said, this explains, talking about the book of Genesis, this explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. Since they are no longer two but one, let no one split apart what God has joined together. Jesus is saying that once you get married, that's it. It is a lifelong relationship. Marriage is the bringing together of two people under God, and once God puts two people together, nothing should separate them. So you need to ask yourself, are you ready for a lifelong commitment? You are probably going to live a very long time. Are you certain that you want to live for a very long time with this person that you're thinking about marrying? I mean, that's an important question you need to ask yourself. Because there's going to be a lot of times in your marriage where things are going to be difficult, where you're going to have to choose love. You see, the only way that you can really have a lifelong commitment like marriage is to choose love. If you think love is just all about being romantic and all the things that we see in movies, then you need to understand that the biblical picture of love is quite a bit different. In order to make it through a lifelong marriage, you need to choose love, a selfless love that focuses on the other person and their desires and their needs. Now, maybe as you think about this, if you're honest with yourself, you might say, no, I am not ready for a lifelong commitment. And guess what? That's great. That's great. If you're not ready for a lifelong commitment, no problem. Just don't get married. Don't walk into a marriage unless you're in it for the long haul. Next question. How is my relationship with God? You might be a pretty new Christian. Maybe you just became a Christian a week ago or a few weeks or a few months ago, maybe even a year ago. You may not be ready to get married yet. You see, the most important relationship in your life is your relationship with God. And your relationship with God affects every other relationship in your life, every other part of your life. And so maybe you need some time to focus on God. Figure out what God wants for your life. Figure out what it means to be a follower of Jesus, to be a Christian. And marriage might just sort of complicate all that right now. There's often in life plenty of time to do things like get married and start a family. Sometimes we need to stop. We need to focus on our relationship with God. Also, when I say how's your relationship with God, it doesn't mean just if you're a new Christian. Maybe you look at your life and you realize you haven't been pursuing God. You haven't really been following Jesus for a while. If that's you, then I would really recommend you really think about getting married. Because again, your most important relationship is with God. And so if you're not prioritizing God, then your life's out of order. And if your life is out of order, then I don't think you should be getting married. So really, take some time, think about where you are in your relationship with God, make sure that you're putting God first in your life, and then you can start deciding, is it time for me to get married? Okay, one more question I want to ask. Am I free to get married? You know, when it comes to marriage, it ultimately doesn't matter what I think, what you think, what your boyfriend or girlfriend thinks about marriage. Ultimately, what matters is what God thinks and what God says. And God says that we aren't always free to get married. You see, if you are divorced, then the Bible has a lot to say about divorce and remarriage. And before you get married to somebody else, if you are divorced, you need to really think about what the Bible has to say about divorce and remarriage. Again, Jesus taught on these things. And Jesus had some important ways for us to think about divorce because he said that divorce is permissible, but only in select circumstances. And so if you've been divorced, you're really going to have to think through this issue. I'd encourage you to talk about it with someone. Talk about it with a Christian who's maybe a little older, a little wiser than you, somebody you trust, a mentor that you can really go over these Bible verses with. If you've been married in the past, I'd encourage you to read 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and Matthew 5:31 and 32, where Jesus talks about divorce and remarriage. Study these passages, think about them, meditate on them, and figure out what do they mean for your life? How do these apply to your life, and what does that mean for you and getting married in the future? There's no easy answers to divorce and remarriage, but it's important that as Christians, we ask ourselves, am I free to be married? Am I free to get married? Is that an option for me, or does God want something else for my life? I want to challenge you with this. Don't just watch this video and kind of file it away. I'd encourage you to talk about these questions with somebody. Talk about them with one or two friends or in an intimate small group and be honest. Be honest with the answers because there's nothing worse than getting married too soon or when you're not ready. God wants you to have a great marriage. He just wants to make sure that you're ready for it.